Tea, coffee, maybe some water?
The stewardess kindly offered the passengers drinks and Murat was waiting for her to catch up with his seat. What will be her reaction, because they haven't seen each other for so long? Finally, the stewardess turned to him. Murat asked, "Can I have some champagne for the meeting?" She looked at him in amazement and then her smile grew even wider.
What a New Year's Eve surprise,
she said and added almost in a whisper.
Let's do it some other time, but for now I recommend coffee.
In her eyes flashed painfully familiar sparks from which Murat involuntarily squeezed his heart. He remembered them from school. Kira was his first love, thanks to which he went to school with pleasure and did not even skip classes in high school, unlike most of his comrades. Every day she filled his life with meaning, and at times when Kira was ill and missed classes, he went very sad and felt that the day was spent in vain. He adored various school events like no one else. It was an opportunity to see the object of his adoration once again, and he just hated vacations, especially summer ones. Every summer, his parents sent Kira to the camp for all 3 shifts or took him to his grandmother in the Crimea, and he counted the days until the new school year and developed his poetic talent by starting to write poetry. However, he was not the only one in love with Kira. There were a lot of fans of the young beauty both at school and in the courtyard. Murat repeatedly got into a fight with them, which after a while he recalled with regret. Kira gave her attention to everyone without exception. Realizing her power of natural charm, she deftly manipulated the boys, honing her skills. At some point, all her friends turned away from her because she ruthlessly invaded other people's relationships and broke even the strongest couples just for fun. It amused her self-esteem and elevated her above the rest. Kira loved to feel at a height, so after school she decided to study to become a flight attendant. Becoming a flight attendant was her goal. She always achieved her goals. It was only at the last school call that Murat decided to confess his feelings to her. Until then, he courageously held on, content with the role of a close friend. Before his eyes, Kira started short novels, played with the hearts of her boyfriends, and mercilessly broke them. He didn't want his heart to be another trophy for her. He kept dreaming that one day she would play enough and want a serious relationship. But Kira was well aware of his feelings, and of course he was on the list of intended victims, only she was saving him as a tidbit for last. Kira switched to a new boyfriend, but before that she greatly humiliated Murat. He gave her a collection of his poems where every line was dedicated to her, and she ridiculed his poetry and returned the collection. They say men don't cry, but it's not true. Murat was crying then. All alone at night. When I went out into the yard, I lit a fire and began to burn my poems. Later, Murat entered the college, then served in the army. One day he had a bad stomach ache and he got to the hospital, where he met a young nurse, Anya, kind and affectionate with angelic patience and insanely beautiful eyes. They got married, and a year later they were expecting their first child.
Let's call him Kirill if a boy is born and Kira if a girl is born,
Anya suggested. Murat was in shock. No way, not Kira.
But why? What do you suggest?
She was surprised.
By the way, since childhood I had a dream to give children exactly these names.
Murat did not know how to convince his wife, so he told her the story of his bitter first love. This affected Anya. It was decided to wait for the birth of the baby, and then a suitable name will come by itself. In the spring, a wonderful girl was born. She was born in March and her parents named her Martha. They seemed to live happily and peacefully. Quiet family life, work, home, weekends at the parents' dacha. It still did not work out to give Martha a brother, but the couple did not despair while fulfilling their other long-standing dreams. Thus, fish, 2 kittens and 1 computer appeared in the house. If with the advent of livestock, their life was replenished with only minor troubles, then with the advent of a computer and wired internet, a real trouble came to the house. By that time, the internet had already dragged in many. A new social network called Odnoklassniki has stirred up the public and spread like a plague among users. Many people wanted to find former schoolmates with whom the connection was lost, find out their fate, look at the photo. And someone intended to revive an old relationship. Murat also succumbed to temptation and registered on the site, so unexpectedly the past knocked on his life. Kira wrote to him first and he replied. He did not expect it from himself, but there was not a trace of the former resentment in his heart. He was pleased with her attention as then, in his school years, Murat found out that Kira works as a flight attendant, that she is still not married, and was not surprised at all. They haven't seen each other for almost 10 years, but judging by the photos, she has become even more beautiful than before, as it seemed to Murat. A correspondence began between them, which gradually began to be diluted by flirting and go beyond friendly communication. He realized this only when he began to delete the browsing history in the browser after each login to the site.
What are you doing there so long at the computer?
Anya asked every night. You go to bed, I'll be right there, he answered evasively. He did not want to lie, because a small lie gives rise to great distrust, and he treasured his wife's trust. However, Murat could not tell the truth either. In a real and adult way, there was nothing between him and Kira, after all, but this only excited his imagination and did not give him peace. Murat began to pay less attention to his family and spend more and more time at the computer for the 100th time watching a photo of a classmate and rereading each of her messages. Wanting to see Kira, he still did not dare to make an appointment and waited with anxious hope for an initiative from her. And Kira was playing with him, teasing him candid pictures and touched on topics of an intimate nature. At some point, she apparently decided and invited Murat on a date. The call of Cyrus was not a surprise to him. He was waiting for this, but at that moment Murat was confused, realizing what their date would lead to, and yet his indecision was broken.
Are we going to visit our parents for the weekend?
Anya asked one morning while packing her daughter for school. Probably not, Murat replied. I can't. There's a lot of work. You are without me this time, okay? Since then, not visiting his parents on weekends has become commonplace for him. The first date with Kira passed in a blur. She invited Murat to her home where a romantic candlelit dinner was waiting for him, but all the treats on the table remained untouched because he was the main dish and Kira openly declared her intentions without long preliminaries.
First, I want to drink champagne and then sleep with you.
He was ready to fulfill any of her wishes just to please her. In the morning, Kira escorted him home, saying that she had to get ready for a flight. When will I see you? He asked her on the way out.
I don't know.
Kira looked slyly as she saw him off. Murat reluctantly returned home and buried his head in the pillow. After a stormy night, he slept almost all day, and in the evening he was woken up by his wife and daughter returning.
Are you not sick? What's the matter with you?
Anya asked, examining him with the experienced gaze of a nurse. Hi, no, it's fine, just tired, Murat said and kissed his daughter who ran up to him. He lived as if half asleep, mechanically went to work and did household chores, daily looked into the computer and checked incoming messages from Kira. There were none, and he didn't even want to read from the others. I wrote to her myself, waited for an answer, and one day I finally received the long-awaited message. Just one phrase.
Come.
He forgot about everything in the world and came to Kira. Kira threw herself into his arms, and they spent a stormy night. Murat, though with difficulty, over the years began to get used to such a life to live. He wondered why they couldn't be together. He did not like deceiving his wife, justifying his sudden absences, and he was even ready to divorce Anya in order to marry Kira. But Kira was satisfied with everything, and she did not want to get married.
Understand, I am a bird of free flight.
She was saying.
You can't put me in a cage.
She always did only what she wanted, was her own mistress, and called Murat only when she wanted it. She did not report to him for her long absence, which sometimes lasted for weeks. He woke up in the middle of the night, left the bedroom and secretly wrote poems in the kitchen, then hid them in a secluded place away from the eyes of the household. If his wife had read his work, she would never have believed that the poems were addressed to her. He had tender, warm feelings for Anya, was grateful to her for the years of marriage, for her affection and care, for her love, for her daughter, for the family comfort, but was ready to give up all this for Kira. He didn't know what a future together with this egoist could be, he just wanted to be with her. Kira took over his thoughts and even at night did not give him rest. Once in a dream Murat said her name and his wife heard it. Anya didn't show it, but this episode only confirmed her suspicion. Since Murat began to sit for hours at the computer and he suddenly had urgent business outside the house, their relationship has cracked. Anya felt that her husband had cooled down to her and there was a smell of betrayal in the air. She tried to bring Murat to a frank conversation, but the conversation will not work. It was also not possible to catch the spouse red-handed, no matter how many times Anya unexpectedly returned home. Her pride did not allow her to play spy, so she convinced herself that there was just a temporary crisis in their marriage. Murat became sad and irritable, but she endured because she loved him. One day Martha was looking for some toy and found Dad's notes and showed them to Mom. Anya read her husband's poems and the whole truth was revealed. In a few lines she caught sight of a familiar name that she liked so much in childhood and which she hated so much after marriage.
Kira, get out of our lives.
Anna thought. Not wanting to make a scandal, she just packed up and left with her daughter to her parents. Murat returned home, saw his elements on the table, and understood everything. Maybe it's for the best, he said to himself. It seemed to him as if everything had finally been decided. Sighing with relief, Murat sat down at the computer. There had been no messages from Kira for almost a month. He wrote to her that he was now free and looking forward to seeing her, then decided to scroll through all the unread messages. One letter shocked him. Mishka Tarakin, his former classmate, with whom they fought for Kira, boasted of his love affairs with Kira. Murat couldn't believe it. Was it really not enough for Kira to have him alone? He asked Misha questions, for example, when he and Kira met, where, how often, Mishka was online, and immediately answered. He described the details and said that they had another date just today. Murat was furious. He rushed to Kira intending to arrive before Mishka and find out the relationship. Kira opened the door and asked with displeasure,
"Why did you come? I didn't call you."
Murat rushed into the living room, seeing a dinner set for two, and attacked Kira with accusations. She gave him an angry look and pointed to the door.
"I don't have to justify myself to anyone. I didn't swear allegiance to anyone, and I'm calling who I want."
"But I thought everything was serious between us," he said at the threshold. "I thought you had matured, changed." Kira pushed Murat out and he barely restrained himself from hitting her. He shouted and banged his fist on the door. "On the way home, I bought a bottle of vodka, took a couple of days off from work and got drunk at home. That day he lost both of his women at once. The wife took with her a quiet family happiness, and the joy of thrills went with Kira. Time passed and he did not dare to start a conversation with Anya, but neither of them filed for divorce. Murat just came to visit them, to see his daughter Marta. They now lived in their parents' apartment in another neighborhood. Kira no longer wrote and did not invite her to her place. Murat habitually visited the site and looked at her pictures. Why did he even start to sort things out? Just ruined everything, or maybe he ruined his life back when he bought a computer. Then he was sent on a business trip to another city. There was very little time left until the new year and Murat was already relaxed, but it was impossible to argue with the authorities. He could have taken the train, but he wanted to buy a plane ticket. Murat did not know that Kira had been transferred to local airlines, so it was a complete surprise for him to meet her on board now. Perhaps she really was a femme fatale for him, since she constantly met him on the path of life. She was smiling with the same charming smile, but Murat again did not find resentment in his heart. Only a slight jealousy was with him when he saw Kira smiling at all the passengers. He tried to read in her gaze what Kira thought of him, but apart from the mischievous lights, Murat saw nothing else. He spent the whole flight in memories, caught Kira with his eyes, but she appeared only after landing and already at the exit when the passengers left the plane. She whispered to Murat that she would write to him. He didn't know what to think. Is she really ready to resume the relationship again? And suddenly Murat clearly realized that he did not want to be a backup option at all. And he also realized that he did not love Kira and the passion had subsided over the years. Away from his hometown, he began to miss his home, not even home, but the time when he was full of family comfort. When the laughter of his wife and daughter was heard in it, homemade cooking smelled delicious and the whole atmosphere was saturated with happiness. He remembered Anya's eyes. His heart was seized with unbearable longing for his wife. Maybe this is true love. Maybe their relationship just got into a zone of turbulence but hasn't crashed yet. Maybe it's not too late to align the controls and keep your aircraft called family. Murat was traveling by train. He couldn't wait to see Anya and finally have a heart-to-heart talk. He would do anything, even on his knees, just to get her back. From the station, Murat went straight to his wife, but there was no one at home. Then he went to his parents' dacha. Dad was joyfully greeted by Murat's daughter.
"Why didn't you come for so long when you've already finished the repairs?"
Anya explained their move to her daughter in this way. "Where's Mom?" he asked Marta.
"And Mom is resting after surgery. They pulled a kidney stone from her."
Murat was ashamed to look his parents in the eye. He thought that she must have told them everything as it is. But even if so, they did not give themselves away in any way. They just welcomed him cordially, gave him tea and pies, and he handed them gifts that he bought on a business trip without waiting for the holiday. Murat hoped with all his heart that a miracle would happen and his wife would forgive him. He quietly entered the room where Anya was sleeping and left his poem next to her. Then Murat and his daughter decorated the Christmas tree right in the yard and decorated the house, made snowmen and knocked icicles off the roof. After putting his daughter to bed, the father of the family himself plunged into sleep with an unfinished book and with a satisfied smile and a feeling of complete peace. And in the morning, barely waking up, Murat saw the eyes of his wife in them. There were tears and love and a familiar tenderness. How do you like this story? Did Anya do the right thing by forgiving Murat? Write your opinion in the comments. Subscribe to the channel. I love you.